Mr Turnbull, welcome back to 7:30.
Great to be with you.
In Foreign Affairs, you wrote, quote, "My own experience with Trump is that he may not like strength and directness from other leaders, but after his rage subsides, he respects them for it. The only way to win the respect of people such as Trump is to stand up to them." Could you tease out what that looks like in practice? I mean, what are the sorts of bilateral issues where Australian leaders would have to stand up to Trump?
Well, they always differ from one leader and one era to another, but obviously the big row that I had with Donald Trump right at the beginning of his presidency was over the refugee resettlement deal that I'd done with Barack Obama. And I wanted Trump to honour that deal, and his intention was not to, and we had a big argument about that, quite a heated one in fact, but I stood my ground and eventually he agreed to stick with the deal, although with great displeasure. He said that it was the worst call he'd had on the day, and it was even worse than the one he'd had with Putin, although he actually got on quite well with Putin, so maybe it wasn't such a critique.
So, nonetheless, how does it work in the sense that you're saying that a leader should stand up to Trump if he was president, but does that mean, how far does it extend out? Does it extend to the whole relationship, or...?
Absolutely. Look, Trump is a bully, obviously, a big, domineering personality, and most people's instinct in dealing with him is to suck up to him and be deferential and tell him what he wants to hear. And of course, personalities like that surround themselves with people who do tell them what they want to hear. Now, if a foreign leader, and there are plenty of examples of that in Trump's first term, takes the approach of essentially sucking up to Trump and telling him what he wants to hear, then they will just be treated with disdain and they will get more bullying. So the only thing you get from a bully, if you give in to them, is more bullying. Now, we have a very good relationship with the United States. I had a very good relationship with Trump, even though we had very different politics. But I had a good relationship with him because I stood up to him and he respected me for it. The critical thing for an Australian Prime Minister and an Australian government is not to be taken for granted. You can overdo all the 100 years of mateship and all of the, rotund phrases about our alliance and friendship, and all of that's true, by the way, but ultimately nations act in their own self-interest, and Donald Trump is particularly transactional.
Throw forward to the end of this year and into the new year, and say Trump wins.
Yep.
It'll be a very different world that he's likely to face, because we've seen, for example, in Europe over the weekend, this push towards the right in the European Parliament elections. And your close friend Emmanuel Macron is just called an election in France because of the rise of the right there. How concerned are you about those trends in politics and what the conjunction of those with a Trump presidency might mean in terms of Australia having fewer democratic allies on board?
Well, it's very concerning because the right-wing parties in Europe that are having some real success really are not committed to the values of liberal democracy as we understand it. And a number of them have very close ties indeed to Vladimir Putin, and indeed, have opposed the support of Ukraine. I mean, take Viktor Orban in Hungary. Even though he's a member of NATO, he went to see Trump at Mar-a-Lago recently and emerged triumphantly saying, when Trump is president, there will not be one more dollar of American aid to Ukraine. So, we will be dealing with a very different America under Donald Trump than it is under Joe Biden. There'll obviously be a lot of continuity, but we have to deal with the hand of cards we're dealt. We have a stake in American elections, but we don't have a say in them.
So one issue that we would expect a change in policy is that Trump would pull the US out of the Paris Accord. Peter Dutton has signalled over the weekend that he'd be pulling Australia out of aspects of that in terms of the 2030 targets. What's your reading about the implications of both those developments for Australia?
Well, the trend towards renewables is very, very strong right around the world. I mean, the cheapest form of new generation is solar and wind, and particularly solar. And as long as there is the sufficient storage, pumped hydro for long duration storage, batteries for shorter durations, then you can get to zero emission energy at a much lower cost. I mean, this is the thing. Renewables are not more expensive. And, this is the problem with, Peter Dutton has, because he's out there saying renewables are expensive and they're putting prices up. Australia has the highest penetration of rooftop solar in the world. So there are millions of Australians who know that renewables are effective and do lower their power prices. But look, it's not good news for the climate globally. Having said that, there is a lot of investment in renewables and renewable development in the United States as a result of Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, and much of it is going on in Republican areas. So how much of that will actually be, terminated or abolished by a Republican Congress, assuming there is one, remains to be seen.
But do you think that the US and Australia walking away from those 2030 targets or any other targets would materially affect the investment projections for renewables?
Well, it will certainly be a big negative. I mean, the reality is, however, in the United States, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden introduced is delivering billions of dollars of investment in new renewable developments, battery factories, solar factories, etc., most of it in Republican districts. And so a Republican Congress may be reluctant to abolish that just out of self-interest. In terms of Australia, it will definitely be a negative. I mean, we need to maintain that continued momentum. The curious thing from an electoral point of view is why Dutton is doing it, because nuclear power is not going to deliver cheaper electricity, that's perfectly clear, and is not going to deliver electricity anytime soon. It will take decades to establish nuclear power plants, and we don't have an abundance of time. And so it seems to me, and to many other people in the Liberal Party, that it's an approach that's going to further alienate the very people whose votes were lost in 2022. And I don't see, how it's going to assist Peter Dutton in winning government. It will probably just ensure he doesn't win any Teal seats back and perhaps loses more seats to Teals and centrist small L Liberals.
Well, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.